The billionaire CEO freezes as he locks eyes with a familiar face in the crowd. His old flame, vanished years ago without a trace, stands before him. But the real shock isn't her return. But before we dive into the full story, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. Now subscribe to the channel and let's get started. Nathan Cross was a man accustomed to living life in the fast lane. His name graced the covers of financial magazines, and his achievements were discussed in hushed, reverent tones throughout the halls of top universities. As the billionaire CEO of Cross Ventures, an investment conglomerate spanning real estate, tech innovations, and high-profile philanthropic endeavors, he was often described as a shark in the boardroom and a phantom in the tabloids. People wondered why he never seemed to date or settle down, but most chalked it up to his relentless ambition. He had everything anyone could want, or so it seemed. On the opening day of the prestigious Global Business Leaders Conference, cameras flashed incessantly. Rows upon rows of chairs were filled with executives, entrepreneurs, and analysts, each hoping to glean insights from the elite of the corporate world. Nathan, impeccably dressed in a tailored charcoal suit and a striking silver tie, was scheduled to deliver the keynote speech on global market transformations. His assistant had meticulously planned every minute of his day, from the handshake with foreign dignitaries to the signing of new partnership deals. In that carefully choreographed schedule, there was no time left for surprises, but life has a way of shattering even the most carefully crafted plans. Nathan was on his way to the VIP lounge when he first spotted her. It happened so quickly he almost missed it, a glimpse of a familiar face in the throng of exhibitors. For a moment, the crowd seemed to blur. The soft hum of conversation in the vast convention center became a distant roar, and all he could see was her. Sarah Morgan. His breath caught. It was as though an old photograph had come to life, a photograph stained by memories of a passionate summer he had never quite managed to forget. His heart hammered in his chest, a sensation he had not felt in years. He tried to convince himself he was mistaken. After all, it had been almost 5 years since they parted ways, each chasing separate dreams. She had told him then, "If you walk out that door, I won't stop you, but don't expect to come back." Yet, here she was, standing behind a booth in the far corner of the conference. The sign above read, Morgan Health Innovations. She was adjusting a stack of brochures and smiling at passers-by who inquired about her services. Nathan stood rooted in place, ignoring the puzzled looks of the other attendees. His mind raced. Why hadn't he heard anything about her in so long? And why did seeing her here of all places make his chest tighten with what felt suspiciously like regret? His assistant tapped him lightly on the arm. "Mr. Cross, we need to move, or we'll be late for the opening panel." Nathan heard the words but couldn't muster a response. Without a second thought, he strode purposefully across the exhibit hall, leaving his assistant behind in a flustered state. Every step brought him closer to the woman who, once upon a time, had made him question what truly mattered in life. Sarah noticed him just as he reached the edge of her booth. The confident gleam in her eye dimmed momentarily, replaced by shock, and then something else. Perhaps hurt. Despite the swirl of questions pounding inside his head, Nathan forced a small, cordial smile. They stood there, face to face, an inexplicable tension weaving itself around them. "Sarah," he managed, voice low, I didn't know you'd be here." She hesitated, smoothing the hem of her blazer, an old nervous habit he remembered from summers past. "Nathan Cross," she said finally, with a polite nod. "I wasn't expecting you either." He noticed how she kept a professional distance, her hands steady, her posture straight as a rod. In that moment, he realized they were no longer just two people who had once cared for each other deeply. They were business professionals at a public venue, each weighed down by their respective reputations. Yet even in that public context, there was something in the air, unspoken and urgent. The memories of warm nights under starlit skies, stolen kisses on a deserted beach, and whispered dreams about a future they might share flitted through Nathan's mind. But his life had taken a sharp turn. He had left Sarah for a more important career opportunity, telling himself he was doing the right thing for both of them. The pain in her eyes that day had been seared into his conscience. Before he could grasp for words, he caught sight of a small photo arrangement pinned to the back of her booth. Several images showed Sarah with a child, maybe 3 or 4 years old, a boy with dark, curly hair and eyes the same startling gray as Nathan's. The breath left his lungs in a rush. For a moment, he believed the child in the photos had to be someone else's, or perhaps he was imagining the resemblance. But the likeness was too uncanny. He stepped forward, voice trembling despite his usual self-control. "Sarah, who is that?" he asked, gesturing to the photographs. Her composure faltered. She followed his gaze, and he saw a flood of conflicting emotions cross her face. Defiance, sadness, protectiveness, an entire kaleidoscope of feelings in just a handful of seconds. She swallowed, then drew herself up. "His name is Oliver," she whispered. "He's my son." Your son?" Nathan could hardly speak around the knot in his throat. He swallowed hard, scanning each photograph more closely. The child's nose, the shape of his chin, even the arch of his brow. All of it mirrored Nathan's own reflection. "Is he?" Sarah's hand curled around the edge of the booth, knuckles whitening as she fought back tears. "He's ours, Nathan. Yours and mine." In that instant, the air seemed to crackle with tension. A new wave of fear and questions broke over him. He'd been told by countless mentors and colleagues that he was unstoppable in any crisis. He had orchestrated billion-dollar deals, talked down aggressive shareholders, survived corporate espionage attempts. Yet, standing here, face to face with a piece of his past that he never knew existed, Nathan felt a rush of panic like never before. Their gazes locked. She was waiting for him to say something, anything. He managed to tear his focus from the photographs. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked softly, struggling to keep his tone level, though he felt as though the floor might vanish under his feet. Her chin quivered, though she quickly clamped down on the emotion. "You walked away, Nathan. You made it clear your career was more important. I tried to reach out, but your line went through your office. I was stonewalled. Then your assistant sent me money one day, like a payoff to keep me silent. I realized you were done. I promised myself I'd protect Oliver on my own." Nathan's head spun. He recalled a time after that fateful summer when he'd been so consumed by acquisitions and expansions that any personal call or letter might have been intercepted by his staff. He had been desperately building an empire, fueled by a need to prove himself to the world. In the process, he had apparently severed the last ties to the woman who had once meant everything to him. His assistant suddenly reappeared at his elbow, speaking in hushed urgency. "Sir, you're due on stage for the panel in just 2 minutes. The organizers are already looking for you." The presence of onlookers slowly registered in Nathan's mind. Conference attendees were beginning to cast curious looks in their direction, sensing the awkward intensity between him and the woman behind the booth. Sarah pursed her lips, glancing around. "I can't talk now," she said, keeping her voice subdued. "I have a presentation scheduled in a few minutes, and I'm not about to let anything disrupt my work." She gathered up a few brochures, as if to make a point. "We have nothing more to say to each other." Nathan opened his mouth to protest, but his assistant tugged at his arm again, reminding him of the world waiting on his every word. The swirl of thoughts in his head warred with the demands of his reality. For the first time in years, he felt thoroughly unprepared. Shaken to his core, he forced himself to step away, but not before murmuring, "This isn't over, Sarah. We need to talk." A flicker of pain crossed her face, and for a moment, something akin to the old warmth shone in her eyes. She quickly masked it, turning her attention to the next interested passers-by. Nathan felt the sting of her dismissal. Heart pounding and mind racing, he turned away and rushed toward the stage where the entire business conference was eagerly awaiting his wisdom. Little did anyone know that the biggest revelation of Nathan Cross's life had just occurred, and it had nothing to do with the global market. And so, beneath the fluorescent lights and the echoing chatter of ambitious entrepreneurs, a powerful secret came into focus. Unbeknownst to all but two people in that vast convention center, the child in Sarah's photographs was Nathan's own flesh and blood. The unstoppable billionaire revered in every boardroom he entered had just stumbled upon the one thing money couldn't buy: lost time with a son he never knew he had. Would you like me to continue with section 206? Ou pro? Você disse, yes, escândalo de corrupção. Pensou por 2 centiches, section 2010, approximately 1 words. Nathan Cross's footsteps echoed through the backstage corridor of the Grand Summit Convention Center, his heart still pounding from his encounter with Sarah. This was not how his day was supposed to begin. He had intended to dazzle the press with clever insights on emerging markets, then finalize a monumental deal that would solidify his reputation among global investors. But at this moment, the prepared speech felt irrelevant, like a monologue written for some other man's life. "Sir, please, we're starting now," his assistant urged, nudging him toward the podium. Murmurs rippled across the audience. Executives in sleek suits, journalists tapping eagerly on their tablets, and rows of young entrepreneurs hoping to absorb every syllable. Normally, Nathan thrived on this kind of high-stakes environment. Words flowed from him like a precisely choreographed dance, confident, persuasive, always in control. But now, as he took the stage, he could still see the pain in Sarah's eyes and the little boy in that photo. The memory clung to him, refusing to let go. Clearing his throat, he began. "Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished colleagues, it's an honor to speak before you today." His voice resonated through the large ballroom. His posture remained impeccable, and to onlookers he exuded the same powerful presence they'd come to expect from the man who built Cross Ventures from the ground up. But inside, he was unraveling. He heard his own voice deliver the carefully crafted remarks about technology and emerging economies, about synergy and the future of global ventures. Yet his mind drifted to unanswered questions. Did Sarah struggle on her own all this time? Did she ever try to reach him personally, only to be blocked? Most important, what kind of father was he, if he had missed his son's entire early childhood? After the keynote concluded, the applause was thunderous. Despite his distraction, he had performed admirably. Cameras flashed, and several high-profile executives rushed forward to congratulate him. In the swirl of voices and extended hands, he could only manage vague responses. The part of him that usually relished these moments had vanished, replaced by a newfound urgency. An urgency to find Sarah again, to talk to her, really talk to her, and to understand who Oliver was. He managed to slip away from the throng of admirers. In the hallway, his assistant tried to hand him a phone and recite a list of important calls he needed to return. An investor from Singapore, a philanthropic foundation from Berlin, a longtime client wanting to renegotiate. Nathan barely heard any of it. Instead, he spun on his heels and leveled a firm stare at the assistant. "I want an updated schedule," he said, voice unwavering. "Cancel everything that's not absolutely critical, push back the contract signings until tomorrow, and no more unapproved phone calls." He hesitated, eyes narrowing. "And one more thing. Did you intercept any personal mail or calls from a Sarah Morgan over the last few years?" His assistant looked startled, stammering a quick denial, eyes darting away in confusion. Nathan wasn't sure if the man was guilty of anything or simply overwhelmed by the question. Without another word, Nathan turned and headed toward the expo floor, determined to locate Sarah's booth again. He felt sure that if he could just see her, Perhaps they could slip away to a corner, away from the prying eyes of the conference, and talk about the child she had named Oliver. But at Morgan Health Innovations, he discovered only an empty table. A sign that read, "Back in 15 minutes," was taped to the front, along with her company logo. He stood there for a moment, feeling uncharacteristically at a loss. Glancing around, he noticed a young representative from a neighboring startup who was adjusting her own booth's display. "Excuse me," Nathan said quietly. "Do you know where Sarah Morgan went?" The representative recognized him instantly. Most people here did, but he usually pretended not to notice. Nervously tucking a strand of hair behind her ear, she spoke quickly. She said she had a private meeting scheduled with some potential partners. "Should be back soon, I think." Nathan thanked her and found himself pacing the row of booths, trying to gather his thoughts. The faint hum of conversation and the clatter of demonstration gadgets felt oppressive in his heightened state of mind. He recalled a time when Sarah used to be so open, always honest about her dreams of starting a healthcare firm that would innovate for underserved communities. And she had done it. She'd launched Morgan Health Innovations apparently on her own. He wondered how she managed the stress of building a company while also raising a child, especially one she had to hide from him. Or at least, that's how it felt in his swirling confusion. Maybe she hadn't wanted to hide the child. Perhaps she just had no way to tell him. Finally, he spotted Sarah returning, briefcase in one hand and a folder of papers in the other. Her posture was stiff, lips pressed together as though bracing herself for a confrontation. As she neared her booth, he stepped forward. Their eyes locked. "You're back," he began, uncertain. She exhaled slowly, glancing around. "Yes, I had a quick meeting." He lowered his voice. "We need to talk, Sarah. About everything." She hesitated. A mixture of anger and resignation flared in her eyes. "I have a schedule to keep, Nathan, just like you do. I'm presenting in 10 minutes. He didn't back down. "I'll walk with you, please." Sarah stared at him for a beat longer, then turned on her heel. She strode briskly through the rows of booths without waiting for him to catch up, leaving him no choice but to follow. They wound their way to a smaller conference room off to the side of the main expo area. At the door, a sign indicated Morgan Health Innovations, Private Forum. A handful of attendees were already seated inside, flipping through pamphlets. Sarah paused to organize her speaking notes on the podium. Nathan stood by the wall, unsure if he should leave or stay. "Nathan," she said, not looking up from her papers, "don't think this is going to be some heartfelt reunion. I worked hard to get into this conference. I'm not risking my first big break because you suddenly decided you have questions." He swallowed. "I understand. But can't we talk afterward? Please, even if it's just a few minutes. Sarah, I had no idea you—" Her head snapped up and she glowered at him with barely suppressed fury. "Don't you dare say you had no idea. I tried to reach you. Maybe your people blocked me. Maybe you were too busy. But you weren't exactly hard to find. A quick search online shows your empire's footprint in 6 countries. If you truly cared, you would have come back." A pang of remorse stabbed at Nathan's chest. She wasn't entirely wrong. He had avoided returning to that chapter of his life, telling himself that the past was best left alone. And by doing so, he might have inadvertently missed the biggest moment of all, the birth of his own child. "I'm sorry," he managed. "I honestly thought you wanted nothing to do with me. Your voice is carrying," she said, noting how a few curious onlookers near the front row were beginning to pay attention. She turned away, her expression a mask of composure. "I'm about to present. If you want to talk after, fine, but only if I decide you deserve that chance. You can wait in the hallway or sit in the back. Just don't distract from what I need to do here." Nathan nodded mutely, stepping aside as she moved to the podium. He chose a seat in the farthest corner, watching as she introduced Morgan Health Innovations to a small crowd. Her voice was strong and steady, detailing her company's mission to revolutionize healthcare delivery in rural communities through advanced telemedicine. Slides flashed behind her, graphs illustrating the potential reach of her solutions. He realized, with a swirl of pride and regret, that her brilliance had only grown over the years. She was captivating, and all the while, the knowledge that somewhere out there, his son existed, 4 years old, with eyes so reminiscent of his own, gnawed at him. He caught himself scribbling Oliver's name on a spare notepad, as if writing it down would make everything more real. The session ended with polite applause, and members of the audience lingered to ask Sarah questions or exchange business cards. Nathan remained in his chair, waiting, ignoring the occasional double-takes from people who recognized him and wondered what the famously aloof CEO was doing here. When the final attendee left, Sarah began packing up her materials. Nathan approached slowly, his hands raised slightly as if approaching a wild animal that might bolt. "Thank you for letting me stay," he said softly. She gave him a curt nod, then checked the time on her watch. "I have 20 minutes before my next panel. Follow me." They stepped into a quiet corner of the corridor. Nathan felt a strange sense of déjà vu, almost like stepping back into their old arguments where she'd meet him with a firm spine, unwavering in her beliefs. He had always admired that, and now he feared it would be directed at him in full force. "This is your chance, Nathan," she stated, crossing her arms. "Say what you need to say." He took a breath. "I had no clue about Oliver, and if I had, I swear I would have what? Sent more money?" The bitterness in her tone was biting. "You really think you can waltz back in just because you finally noticed we exist?" Pain flickered across Nathan's face. He reached into his suit pocket and pulled out a small notepad. He scribbled his personal cell number and hotel suite details. "Look, I realize I've made mistakes. Maybe you reached out and I was too blind to see, but I want to fix this. I want to know him, to know you again. Let me start by hearing everything, from you, in your words." She took the note, stared at it with an unreadable expression, then looked up. "We'll see. I'm not making promises. I'm here to grow my business, to give my son a better future. I don't need your money, if that's what you're thinking." He shook his head. "That's not what I'm offering, Sarah. I'm offering me, if you'll have me in any capacity." For a long moment, her gaze softened, and he saw traces of the woman he used to make laugh with impromptu ice cream runs and late-night stargazing sessions. But just as quickly, a wall went up again. She slipped his note into her blazer pocket. "I'll call you," she said at last, voice subdued. "Not because I want your apology, but because Oliver deserves the truth. Keep your phone on." And with that, she was gone, heading to her next obligation without looking back. Nathan stood alone in the corridor, heart pounding. He had faced massive mergers, cutthroat competition, and personal attacks from rival CEOs. But nothing left him feeling so uncertain, so at the mercy of someone else's decision. For the first time in years, he realized his fate was tied to more than just profit margins. It was tied to a 4-year-old he'd never met. "Would you like me to continue with Section 310? Você disse, yes, solicitação de O1 Pro Mode. Pensou por 2M38, Section 310, approximately 1,000 words. When Sarah disappeared into the conference crowd, Nathan stood rooted to the spot, staring after her as if trying to hold on to her presence. He'd just offered her a piece of paper with his personal number and hotel suite details, information he typically guarded more fiercely than any corporate secret. A wave of emotions threatened to swamp him. Regret, guilt, hope. He drew in a slow breath, telling himself he had to maintain composure. But composure felt like a flimsy shield against the torrent of thoughts raging inside his head. His phone buzzed. He glanced at it, half expecting it to be Sarah, only to see a text from his assistant. "Sir, a reporter from the Financial Herald is asking for a quick interview. Also, an urgent call from Japan, and the board is expecting a debrief." Nathan clenched his teeth. His empire wouldn't stop spinning just because his personal life had imploded. That was the unspoken rule of business. No matter the crisis, you kept the wheels turning. Tapping out a curt reply, he told his assistant to handle the reporter and postpone any non-essential calls. He would face the board soon enough, but first he needed a moment to steady himself. He glanced around the corridor. No sign of Sarah. He didn't expect her to be within earshot, but a small part of him had hoped she might linger. She's not that naive, he reminded himself. She's a mother now. Cautious, protective. Of course she would leave. Every step he had taken to return to her life came years too late. Still, she had at least agreed to call. That was more of a chance than he deserved. Crumpling the note she'd left behind in his hand, he vowed he wouldn't squander it. Nathan's next stop was an exclusive networking luncheon. Ordinarily, this would be his stage. Handshakes, confident smiles, forging strategic alliances. But today, his nerves were on edge. Rows of tables dressed in pristine white tablecloths stretched out across the room. At each setting lay a leather-bound agenda, the event's schedule engraved in gold. The presence of so many titans of industry usually exhilarated him, but as he navigated the sea of handshakes and introductions, everything felt oddly distant. While a server filled his glass with sparkling water, a voice at his elbow made him turn. Nathan Cross, correct? The speaker was a tall, distinguished woman with graying hair swept into a sleek bun. From her polished demeanor and the cluster of high-profile attendees hovering around her, he guessed she was a major influencer in finance. Her name badge read Marjorie Drake, Global Commerce Bureau. Nathan offered a handshake. "Yes, Ms. Drake." She smiled politely. "We've never officially met, but I've followed your career. I've been wanting to pick your brain about a few policy angles for foreign direct investment." Years ago, this conversation would have been oxygen for Nathan. He recognized her name. Marjorie was known for her incisive commentary on international trade, her opinion often shaping entire policy directions. He forced a polite smile. "I'd be honored, Ms. Drake." "Marvelous." She gestured for him to sit at one of the round tables off to the side. A hush of anticipation fell over the others who followed. Clearly, they were hoping to glean insights from a conversation between two heavyweights of finance. Nathan settled into a chair, mentally summoning his best executive self. "Don't let them see you're distracted," he told himself. "So what aspects of foreign direct investment interest you?" he asked. Marjorie launched into a series of questions about upcoming legislation, cross-border partnerships, and the ripple effects of certain volatile markets. Nathan's answers came on autopilot, decisive, well-informed, tinged with the confidence that had made him a legend. As the conversation deepened, he felt his usual stride returning. This was the environment he had mastered: strategy, data, and well-timed persuasion. Yet in the back of his mind, he couldn't stop seeing the photograph of the little boy, Oliver. "So, if Cross Ventures were to shift its approach," Marjorie was saying. Nathan blinked. "I'm sorry, could you repeat that?" A small frown flickered across her features. "Certainly. I was asking how Cross Ventures would handle regulatory shifts if, say, certain Asian markets adopted stricter compliance standards." Nathan's mouth went dry. Stricter compliance. He knew the standard pitch. Cross Ventures prided itself on meeting compliance head-on, turning potential bureaucratic roadblocks into a strategic advantage. But the usual words felt hollow. He had built an empire on unwavering attention to detail, anticipating every shift with laser precision. And yet, the most crucial shift of his personal life, fatherhood, had slipped right past him. Collecting himself, he nodded and delivered a measured response, referencing recent case studies and offering predictions on how global markets would evolve. The onlookers scribbled notes. Marjorie's eyes shone with keen interest. It was the exact reaction he was used to eliciting. By the time they finished, compliments flowed freely about his foresight. He shook hands all around and politely excused himself, ignoring the feeling that he was operating on autopilot. One foot in front of the other, he reminded himself. Late afternoon found Nathan in a quiet lounge reserved for VIP guests. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city skyline, the glass tinted just enough to shield them from the harsh summer sun. Plush leather chairs were arranged in small clusters, offering pockets of privacy amidst the bustle of the conference. Nathan sank into one of the chairs, alone at last. He caught sight of his reflection in the window, the impeccable suit, the neatly combed hair, the expression that was supposed to be calm and collected. Yet his eyes betrayed him. They looked unsettled, as if they belonged to someone else. He let out a sigh, burying his face in his hands for a moment. All around him, people chatted in hushed voices, CEOs cutting deals over cocktails, up-and-coming entrepreneurs hoping to gain a foothold with investors. He overheard snippets of conversations about venture capital deals, expansions, and the next big tech breakthroughs. Normally, he would have joined in, gleaned potential leads, formed new alliances, but a pressing thought churned in his mind. Will Sarah really call? When? And will I even know what to say if she does? He tapped his phone screen out of habit, checking for notifications. Nothing from Sarah. The sense of dread he'd been carrying all day threatened to intensify. What if she decides I'm not worth the trouble? He thought grimly. I'd deserve that, wouldn't I? Mr. Cross? A soft voice jolted him from his worries. He looked up to see a young woman wearing the conference's staff badge. Your presence is requested at the meeting room A in 5 minutes. The board members from the East Coast are waiting. He sighed, nodding. Duty calls? Again. Thank you, he said, standing up. He straightened his tie, slid his phone into his pocket, and steeled himself for the next wave of obligations. Meeting room A was plush, with modern decor designed to impress. A polished hardwood table dominated the center, ringed by 12 executive-style chairs. 6 of them were already occupied by major shareholders, stern-faced individuals who had collectively financed some of CrossVenture's biggest expansions. They were the kind of people who rarely took no for an answer. Nathan, one of them greeted as he entered, we've been hoping to catch you before tomorrow's sessions. It was Gerald Price, an old investor who had been with him since the early days. His tone wavered between warmth and the usual commanding edge. We need an update on the M&A negotiations you've been orchestrating. Nathan closed the door behind him. Of course, he said, sliding into the seat at the head of the table. Normally these sorts of meetings revitalized him. He'd give them a confident play-by-play of the latest developments, then outline exactly how CrossVentures would profit. But now, as he looked around the table, he found it difficult to summon the same adrenaline. He began, nonetheless, methodically. Our negotiations with the European telecom firm are on track. Legal has reviewed their proposed structure, and we can likely close within the next quarter. We anticipate a 4% revenue boost in the first year alone, and his phone vibrated in his pocket. He froze. He had specifically asked not to be disturbed, so this was either a dire emergency or Sarah. Pulse pounding. He excused himself under the guise of stepping out to confirm a detail with an assistant. The board members frowned slightly but said nothing. They knew better than to question the man who had made them all wealthier than they'd imagined. In the corridor, away from prying eyes, he pulled out his phone. An unknown number displayed across the screen. Heart hammering. He tapped to answer. A silence. Then, Nathan? Sarah's voice came through barely above a whisper. He swallowed, forcing his tone to remain steady. Yes, I'm here. She was silent for a moment, as though uncertain. He waited, a million words crowding his thoughts, but he didn't want to scare her off by speaking first. Finally, she breathed out, Oliver's with my mom tonight. I'm free, if you want to talk. One of the conference lounges is quiet after hours. But if you can't make it, I can, he rushed. Tell me where. I'll come right now. He heard the slightest edge of tension in her voice. There's a lounge near the Redwood Ballroom on the mezzanine level. Let's meet at 9. Nathan could have ended every meeting, canceled every engagement just to get there immediately. But 9 o'clock was less than an hour away. He forced himself to stay calm. I'll be there. Thank you, Sarah. She ended the call abruptly, leaving him standing in the corridor, phone still pressed to his ear. For a split second, relief coursed through him, followed by anxiety. This is it, he thought, the first real conversation since I walked away, and I'm about to find out exactly how deep this wound goes. He sucked in a breath, trying to clear his head. The board meeting was still in progress, and he had responsibilities. But all that seemed trivial compared to the idea of finally hearing Sarah's story and learning about his son firsthand. Nathan re-entered the conference room, apologizing for the interruption, and resumed the discussion with the board. For once he rushed through the highlights, skipping the usual flourish. He could sense their dissatisfaction, but none of them pressed him too hard. Cross Ventures was in a powerful position, and after all, the greatest results always flowed from the brilliant, if occasionally mercurial, mind of Nathan Cross. In the back of his thoughts, an invisible clock ticked toward 9 o'clock. Every passing second felt like an eternity. He wrapped up as quickly as decorum allowed, promising a detailed briefing the next day. The board exchanged puzzled glances, but no one objected. By the time he finished, the clock read 8:42 p.m. He practically sprinted from the room, not caring if it seemed uncharacteristic. He navigated the long hallways, bypassing a throng of conference attendees who hoped to engage him in more shop talk. Usually, he would have indulged them with at least a cursory greeting. Tonight, he had only one priority. Up on the mezzanine level, the Redwood Ballroom's doors stood open, revealing a half-lit space where a catering crew packed away linens and glassware. Nearby, an adjacent lounge area sat deserted, except for a few plush chairs and low coffee tables. A discreet row of potted plants offered partial privacy. This must have been the place Sarah had mentioned. It was 8:55 p.m. He settled into a seat, checked his phone obsessively. No new messages. The minutes crawled. When the clock reached 9:01, a pang of fear flared within him. What if Sarah changed her mind? What if she... Then he heard the click of heels on the polished floor. Turning, he saw her approaching. She still wore the tailored blazer and skirt from her earlier panel, but now she looked more vulnerable, somehow smaller, without the professional posture she'd held in front of an audience. Her expression was guarded, her eyes flicking around the room as if to confirm they were alone. Nathan stood, awkwardly smoothing his suit jacket. His heart thundered. Sarah. She offered no greeting, only a terse nod as she slipped into the chair opposite him. There was a tension in the air, thick enough to cut with a knife. The overhead light cast a gentle glow on her features, highlighting the slight tremor in her hands as she clasped them together in her lap. Nathan took in every detail, from the faint dark circles under her eyes to the way she kept her posture stiff as if bracing herself. They were alone at last, away from the demands of a world that expected everything from him. Now the only thing that mattered was whether Sarah believed anything he said. He exhaled shakily, choosing his words with care. Thank you for coming. She nodded once, not letting her expression soften. You said you wanted to know everything. Here's your chance, Nathan. Ask. And so, with the ghostly hush of the dimly lit lounge around them, Nathan prepared to learn about the 4 years he had missed, and whether it was too late to become the father Oliver deserved. Would you like me to continue with section 4-10? Você disse, yes, Revelations pensou por 153's section 4-10, approximately 1,000 words. Nathan could hear his heart pounding in his ears as he sat across from Sarah in the quiet mezzanine lounge. Outside, the conference continued in its glittering chaos, but here, time seemed to slow. The faint scent of fresh polish lingered in the air, and the soft overhead lights bathed them in a subdued glow. It struck him that despite all his power and resources, he had never felt more vulnerable than in this moment. Sarah laced her fingers together, resting them on her lap. From the tension in her shoulders, he could see she was bracing herself. This was no ordinary conversation for either of them. He cleared his throat, uncertain how to begin without sounding trite or defensive. His carefully rehearsed lines, if he had any, were nowhere to be found. "Thank you," he repeated quietly, "for agreeing to talk." She lifted her gaze, eyes guarded. "I'm only doing this for Oliver," she said. "He's old enough to ask questions, and I can't keep giving him half answers forever." The mention of Oliver made Nathan's chest tighten. He wanted to ask 1,000 questions about Oliver's favorite color, his favorite toys, the words he spoke first, what made him laugh. But the enormity of it all forced him to be systematic, methodical, just as he would be in a business negotiation. He leaned forward, elbows braced on his knees. "Tell me how it happened," he said softly. "I know I left, and I deeply regret the way I left. But help me understand what came after that." She sat up, folding her arms as though to preserve some barrier between them. "You walked out 5 years ago," she began. "You said your career was calling and you had no time for distractions. My phone calls went unanswered. My letters came back unopened. And after a few months I found out I was pregnant." Nathan's stomach churned with guilt. "Did you try to let me know?" Her laugh was short and hollow. "I tried everything I could without humiliating myself further. Calls, messages, even an email to your old personal account. Your assistant, whoever it was back then, always responded with the same line, that personal matters needed to go through the legal or PR departments. A few times, I got a cold form letter from your company. After that, I realized I was talking to a brick wall." Nathan's face paled. He remembered that period of his life, expansions into Asia, back-to-back deals, sealed boardrooms. He had delegated personal communications to staff who were trained to keep distractions away from him. He winced, recalling the instructions he'd once given. No personal calls unless it's an emergency. At the time, he never imagined he would miss something of such profound importance. "I had no idea," he whispered. "I swear." She took a steadying breath, as if fighting to keep her voice level. "Even if you had known, what difference would it have made? You were building an empire, Nathan. Meanwhile, I was alone, scared, and facing a decision about bringing a child into the world. I chose to have Oliver, and every day since I've fought to give him the best I could manage." A pang of helplessness flared inside him. He reached out, hesitant, as though wanting to place a hand over hers, but she withdrew, her posture rigid. She still didn't trust him. How could she? "And your family? Friends?" he asked. "Were you able to get support from them?" She nodded, glancing down. "My mother was a rock, especially in those early months. She moved in with me for a while, helped out when I was trying to launch Morgan Health Innovations. I juggled an infant and a startup simultaneously." A dry laugh escaped her lips. "Not exactly how I pictured my future." Nathan's admiration flickered. It was impossible not to respect her determination. "You must have done an amazing job. I've seen your booth, read some of your materials. Your company seems to be doing impactful work." Sarah's eyes flicked up at him, their intensity unwavering. "I didn't do it for your praise. I did it because I want Oliver to have a world worth living in. Besides, I poured my heartbreak and frustration into creating something meaningful. It was better than sitting around feeling sorry for myself." Silence stretched between them. Nathan drew in a measured breath. "I understand. Look, I can't change the past, no matter how much I want to. But I'm here now, willing to do whatever it takes to be a part of Oliver's life. That is, if you'll allow it." Her lips pressed thin. She studied him, searching his face for sincerity. What exactly do you mean by be a part of his life? You can't just show up on weekends or sign a few checks and call yourself his father. A surge of emotion welled up in him. I don't want to sign checks, he said earnestly. That's not it. I want to know him, spend time with him, teach him, learn from him. I'm not promising I'll be perfect, but I promise I won't run away again. Sarah's brow furrowed. Do you even know how to make space for that? Your entire existence is consumed by cross-ventures. You hop countries, strike deals, appear in the media. Where does a 4-year-old fit into that schedule? The question lingered, and Nathan felt the weight of it. He couldn't deny his life was chaotic, fueled by near-constant demands. But the fear of losing out on fatherhood, of being forever shut out, now loomed larger than any corporate conquest. I'll make the time, he said quietly, his voice firm. I have to. Her gaze flickered with a mix of skepticism and something else, maybe a grain of hope. Oliver's a bright kid, curious about everything. He loves puzzles, building things, figuring out how they work. He's determined, stubborn when he sets his mind to something. Reminds me of someone else I used to know, she said pointedly. Nathan's chest filled with a warmth that was half pride, half sorrow. I'd like to meet him. Properly, I mean. Only if it's okay with you. She swallowed, her expression guarded. I need to think about the best way to handle that. He knows you exist, but I never told him you'd be suddenly showing up. I need to prepare him. A flicker of relief coursed through Nathan. Of course. Whatever you think is best. And if he wants to meet me, He paused, voice cracking with emotion. I'll do everything I can to earn his trust. Sarah closed her eyes for a moment. Talking about Oliver, this openly brought up a swirl of memories and regrets that clearly pained her. Still, she faced him again, shoulders squared. Okay, she said softly. But don't you dare break his heart. If you come in and out of his life, like some fleeting business interest, I'll make sure you regret it. Nathan didn't flinch at the warning. He deserved every bit of her protective rage. I promise I'm not going anywhere, he said, trying to summon that same steadfast conviction he used in his best negotiations. Only this time it wasn't about profits. It was about love, something far more fragile. I'll stay, whatever it takes. For the first time that night, Sarah's features softened, just enough for him to see. The lines of tension around her mouth eased, and her eyes glistened with conflicting emotions. She reached into her purse and pulled out a small photograph. Carefully, she placed it on the table between them. Nathan leaned in to see, breath catching. The photo showed Oliver on a swing, mouth open in a wide grin, eyes bright as though he had just laughed at something delightfully silly. He had a mop of wavy hair that mirrored Sarah's texture, yet the tilt of his smile was undeniably reminiscent of Nathan's. He has your laugh, Sarah murmured, looking at the picture. Believe me, it's uncanny sometimes. Nathan's throat felt tight. He gently touched the corner of the photo with his fingertips as if it were a priceless artifact. He's perfect, he breathed. The words slipped out without him even realizing. Sarah watched him closely, then averted her gaze. I kept telling myself I could do this alone, she said. But every time Oliver asked, "Where's my dad?" I felt that sting. I tried not to fill his head with anger. I just said you were far away, busy with important work. I tried to be honest without letting my bitterness consume me. He nodded, tears threatening to well behind his eyes. For a moment he thought about how different life could have been if he'd stayed, or at least kept a line of communication open. He wondered if he'd ever forgive himself. Thank you for not turning him against me, he said quietly. She sighed. I did what I thought was right. Maybe now he can have a father. But be warned, he's going to have questions and you need to be ready to answer them. I will, Nathan said. Whatever he wants to know, I'll be honest. They sat in silence for a few breaths, the magnitude of what they'd just agreed settling around them. Outside, a distant murmur of voices from the conference drifted in. The world kept spinning, deals kept happening. But here, they were forging something far more critical. Sarah slid the photograph back into her purse. "All right, She paused, inhaling as if uncertain how to phrase the next step. "I'll text you tomorrow. We can figure out a time for you to come by. Slowly, carefully." He felt a rush of relief so profound he could hardly speak. "Thank you," he finally managed. "I know I don't deserve this chance." Her eyes met his, and he saw tears she refused to shed. "It's not about you. It's about Oliver." He nodded, accepting that. If that was how it had to be, so be it. At least it gave him a place to start. Sarah glanced at her watch. "I need to get back. I have an early investor breakfast. I'm sure you have 1,000 obligations, too." Nathan almost smiled. Obligations? Yes, he had plenty. But none felt more pressing than making sure he didn't disappoint Oliver. "Yeah," he said, standing up. "I do, but trust me, this—" He gestured vaguely, meaning the conversation about Oliver. "This is my priority now." She rose as well, nodding in muted agreement. For a moment they stood there, awkwardly sharing the same air. Then she turned to go. As she took a few steps, she paused, glancing back over her shoulder. Her gaze locked with Nathan's, and he saw a glimmer of the old warmth in her eyes, still overshadowed by caution, but alive nonetheless. "Don't make me regret this," she whispered, and with that, she headed back out into the hallway, leaving him alone with his hopes and remorse. Nathan remained there for a few moments, steadying his pulse. He glanced at his phone. It was nearing 10, and the conference's evening events would soon wind down. In the morning, deals would be signed and speeches made, but the real negotiation between him, Sarah, and Oliver had just begun. "Would you like me to continue with Section 5 of 10? Você disse, yes, solicitação de O1 Pro Mode. Pensou por 4M9's Section 510, approximately 1,000 words. The night stretched on after Sarah left, and Nathan found himself wandering the corridors of the convention center, his mind a tempest of thoughts. Conference attendants were tapering off, drifting toward hotel elevators or hailing taxis on the curb. Security staff began their usual end-of-day walkthroughs, locking side doors and dimming overhead lights. The cheerful hum of industry chatter was replaced by a low hush that highlighted the emptiness of the halls. He eventually wound up standing at one of the large windows overlooking the city. A sprawling tapestry of lights glittered below, each tiny spark a sign of someone's life moving forward, just as Sarah had done without him. With an exhale, he pressed a hand against the glass, feeling the coolness seep into his skin. 5 years lost, he thought. What do I do now? In the past, problems had solutions measured in stock prices or expansions. This was different, an issue with no neat algorithm. Sometime around midnight, he finally returned to his hotel suite. The luxurious space, with its sleek modern furniture and panoramic skyline views, felt strangely hollow. He flicked on a single lamp, shedding a soft golden glow across the living area. There, on a polished end table, lay a mountain of documents from his day's meetings, waiting for signatures and final decisions. He stared at them but saw only Oliver's face in the photograph Sarah had shown him. Rubbing his temples, Nathan dropped into the leather armchair. "You'll have to juggle the biggest acquisition of your career with fatherhood," a small inner voice told him. Usually, he thrived under pressure, but now that confidence wavered. He had always prided himself on controlling every variable, yet he couldn't control how Oliver would feel about him. Eventually, exhaustion took hold. After a hot shower that did little to quiet his thoughts, he lay down on the king-sized bed, phone by his side, just in case Sarah texted or called. He drifted off, the last image in his mind that bright smile in Oliver's photo. Morning arrived with a jolt. He'd set his alarm earlier than usual, determined to be prepared for the day's commitments before any chance of meeting Sarah or Oliver. Dawn light filtered through the curtains, painting the suite in gentle hues of amber. He rose, dressed in a crisp navy suit, and scanned his schedule. 7:30 a.m. Breakfast with potential investors. 9:00 a.m. Panel discussion on global tech expansions. 11:00 a.m. Board follow-up from the previous night's truncated meeting. 1:00 p.m. Luncheon with high-level donors. TBD. A potential meeting with Sarah and Oliver. He felt a pang at how uncertain that last entry was. Grabbing his phone, he checked for any messages from Sarah. None. A small ache settled in his chest. She said she'd text me today, he reminded himself. It's early, maybe she's just busy. Resisting the urge to overthink, he packed his notes and stepped into the hallway. Time to face the day. The breakfast with potential investors took place in a sophisticated rooftop restaurant at the very hotel hosting the conference. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased the city's early bustle below. Sitting at a round table laden with fresh fruit and pastries, Nathan tried to focus on the conversation. A pair of wealthy sisters from Europe wanted to funnel capital into CrossVenture's next wave of projects. Their interest piqued at any mention of overseas expansions. Normally, Nathan would dazzle them with short and long-term forecasts, but a part of his mind remained distant. He managed to keep them engaged, though, flipping seamlessly to slides on his tablet detailing expansions in Asia and Africa. They nodded along, impressed. Yet every now and then he'd pause mid-sentence, scanning the phone he'd placed face-up on the table's edge. No notifications. Tamping down his rising anxiety, he forced a cordial smile and continued. When the conversation wrapped, both sisters beamed at him, promising a formal investment offer soon. He shook their hands, relieved that at least on the business front, he was still on track. But as they exited the restaurant, a stab of envy ran through him. The sisters teased each other, talked about their close-knit family. A concept he was only beginning to grasp now that he knew about Oliver. By 9, he was standing behind a lectern in one of the main ballrooms, a sea of expectant faces watching him. The panel was about global tech disruption, and he was the headline speaker. For the next hour, he discussed the intricacies of international regulations, describing how CrossVentures strategically managed unexpected shifts in technology markets. His eloquence earned approving nods from the audience. A few times he even cracked a mild joke, something about regulation being the necessary frenemy of innovation. Polite laughter followed, but inside he was counting the seconds until the session ended. At 9:58, they concluded with a round of applause. Nathan stepped off the stage to greet several enthusiastic entrepreneurs. Usually he enjoyed these post-panel chats, but now he offered only clipped politeness, scanning the crowd for any sign of Sarah. He knew she had her own itinerary, likely meeting potential partners for Morgan Health Innovations. Calm down, he told himself. She'll reach out in her own time. His phone remained silent. By the time he ducked into a private boardroom at 11 for the follow-up meeting with his board, his nerves were fraying. Once again, the same serious faces from yesterday ringed the polished table. They wasted no time diving into the details Nathan had glossed over. The European telecom acquisition, which needed final sign-offs. A newly proposed capital infusion that could accelerate CrossVenture's R&D. A rumored competitor move that might threaten their foothold in South America. Nathan handled the questions with measured authority, though internally his patience was thin. The conversation stretched longer than he'd hoped. Everyone had an angle to discuss. About halfway through, his phone vibrated. The mild buzz made him stiffen in his chair. Blood pounded in his ears. Could that be Sarah? He cast a quick glance at the phone. The board members noticed, pausing in their debate. Clearing his throat, Nathan forced a professional smile. "Apologies, let's proceed," he said, ignoring the phone for the moment. He dared not break the flow again as he had the night before. Within 10 minutes, they reached a resolution. The board would give him a green light to finalize the telecom deal, provided the legal team saw no red flags. Handshakes followed, and the members started to disperse. As soon as the last one left, Nathan snatched his phone from the table. A single text glowed on the screen from an unknown number. His heart nearly stopped. Quickly, he unlocked it. "Hi, Nathan. I'll be free around 3 p.m. after my final panel. Oliver's with me at the conference daycare center. Maybe we could meet briefly?" He read it twice, relief washing over him. She hadn't changed her mind. He typed back quickly, "Yes, please. Just tell me where. I'm free whenever you are." Her reply came moments later. "Let's meet in the third-floor atrium lounge at 3:15. Oliver usually has a small snack around that time." He stared at the words, nearly disbelieving. "I'm going to see my son." Tucking the phone in his pocket, he exhaled. The feeling of anxious tension eased, replaced by a swirl of anticipation. At 3:15, he would take a step into the unknown territory of fatherhood. The rest of the day's obligations suddenly felt trivial by comparison. Noon came, and with it, a fancy luncheon in a swanky hall. Colleagues from the philanthropic arm of Cross Ventures tried to engage him in conversations about new charitable ventures. While he nodded along politely, everything in his mind revolved around the meeting scheduled for 3:15. Time seemed to slow, each minute dragging while he navigated polite small talk and took carefully portioned bites of salad. At 1:30, he excused himself under the guise of preparing for an important call, ducking away from the event. In reality, he just needed solitude to catch his breath. He found a small side lounge with plush chairs and sat down, phone in hand, counting the minutes. He couldn't recall the last time he'd felt so nervous. The great Nathan Cross, who had negotiated multi-billion-dollar mergers without batting an eyelash, now found himself restlessly bouncing his leg, wondering if a 4-year-old boy would like him. He considered reaching out to his assistant to reschedule everything that afternoon, but then decided against it. The less chaos, the better. He'd vanish for an hour, just enough time to meet Oliver, and come back with some semblance of calm. Or so he hoped. Finally, at 3:05, he made his way up to the third-floor atrium lounge. It was a quiet, open space with large glass windows that let in natural light, decorative potted plants adding a hint of greenery. A few small tables and chairs dotted the area. At the far end, plush couches formed a cozy nook. He noted a coffee station in one corner, complete with an array of snacks and pastries for conference-goers. He arrived early, as always, scanning the room. It was mostly empty, just a couple of attendees checking their phones. 3:07, read the clock on the wall. She'll be here soon. His throat tightened. Should he stand or sit? Did that matter? At 3:12, footsteps approached. Nathan recognized Sarah's silhouette first, then saw the small figure walking beside her, hand in hers. A jolt of adrenaline shot through him. He's right there. Oliver wore a striped shirt and jeans, curly hair bobbing as he looked around with wide-eyed curiosity. At a glance, the boy looked up at Sarah, saying something in a voice too soft for Nathan to hear. The mother smiled gently, then guided him closer. Nathan's knees threatened to go weak. He forced himself to stand straight, exhaling slowly. Sarah's expression was guarded yet calm, her eyes meeting Nathan's in a subtle warning. "Remember what I said. Don't hurt him." Oliver peered around his mother's leg, eyes bright and inquisitive. Nathan could see a spark of both curiosity and shyness, typical of a child in an unfamiliar situation. Oliver clutched a small stuffed dinosaur in one hand. "Oliver," Sarah said gently, resting a hand on his shoulder. "Remember I told you we might see your dad today?" Oliver's gaze flicked from her to Nathan. He tilted his head as if trying to reconcile a puzzle piece. In that moment, Nathan felt the weight of 5 lost years press against his heart. He swallowed. "Hi," Oliver said, his voice small. Nathan bent down slightly, wanting to be on his level. "Hi there, Oliver," he managed, heart hammering in his chest. I'm Nathan. It's really nice to meet you. Oliver studied him for a moment, furrowing his brow. You look bigger than the pictures I draw, he observed, a hint of childlike bluntness in his tone. Sarah looked surprised, as though Oliver had revealed something private. Nathan's lips twitched into a slight smile. I bet your drawings are way cooler than I could ever imagine. The boy shrugged, then glanced at Sarah for reassurance. She offered him a nod, encouraging him to continue. Gathering courage, Oliver asked, Are you here for the big grown-up meeting? Nathan nodded, forcing himself to speak calmly. Yes, there's a conference happening, but the most important reason I'm here is to see you. Oliver's wide eyes sparkled with a hint of pride. He gripped the dinosaur tighter. Mom says you help run big companies. That must be fun. Do you build things? Nathan realized that even describing his job to a 4-year-old felt like uncharted territory. I don't build things with my hands, he admitted, but I help create projects. I work with lots of people who build amazing stuff. Oliver nodded thoughtfully, accepting that explanation with an air of seriousness. I like building stuff, he said. I made a tower in the daycare this morning. Sarah exhaled softly, shooting Nathan a sideways glance that said, You're doing okay. He drew a breath, the tension in his chest easing slightly. He was overwhelmed by the mere fact that Oliver was chatting with him, still shy but curious and unafraid. Well, maybe you can show me sometime, Nathan offered, voice gentle. Oliver glanced down at the dinosaur and nodded. Maybe. Mom said we could have a snack, right? Sarah guided them to a small table near the coffee station. Nathan followed, feeling like he was stumbling through a fragile dream. They settled into chairs, Oliver perched between them, looking from one adult to the other, as if noticing the tension he couldn't fully understand. Sarah handed Oliver a juice box and some crackers. Nathan's gaze flicked between them, waves of regret and a glimmer of happiness colliding inside him. This is what I missed, he thought. Snack time, little conversations. Do you have a dinosaur? Oliver asked suddenly, tilting his head at Nathan. Nathan blinked. A dinosaur, not with me, he said. But I could definitely get one. Or, well, maybe we could pick one out together. Sarah shot him a look that was partly exasperation, partly amusement. Clearly, Oliver had a fascination with dinosaurs. He has an entire collection, she explained to Nathan, each with its own name and story. Oliver nodded fiercely, sipping juice. Yeah, Mom's favorite is T-Rex, but I like Triceratops. Nathan swallowed a lump in his throat, forcing a tender smile. Triceratops is cool. 3 horns, right? Oliver beamed. You do know dinosaurs. The small moment of connection made Nathan's heart flutter. Across the table, Sarah's gaze softened just a fraction. They were a curious trio, an almost family that was both familiar and brand new. Oliver then returned his focus to his snack, munching away. Nathan, uncertain how to continue, fiddled with his shirt cuff. He sneaked a glance at Sarah, who gave him an almost imperceptible nod, acknowledging the significance of this moment. In the hush of the atrium lounge, the world outside seemed to fade. For Nathan, time slowed to the beat of a child's curiosity and the quiet acceptance in Sarah's eyes. Even if it was only for a few short minutes, they felt like the start of a profound and delicate journey, one that would demand patience, honesty, and a commitment stronger than any corporate deal he'd ever made. Would you like me to continue with Section 610? Você disse, yes, solicitação de O1 Pro Mode. Pensou por 3 Mem 37 Section 610, approximately 1,000 words. The atrium's glass ceiling bathed the trio in natural light, lending a soft glow to the moment. At the small table, Nathan tried to ignore his racing heart as he watched Oliver finish his juice, carefully crushing the empty box. A part of him marveled at the small, everyday gestures he'd never witnessed before. The simplest things, a child's snack, a question about dinosaurs, felt momentous. "I gotta throw this away," Oliver announced, holding up the empty juice box. Sarah reached to take it from him, but Nathan beat her to it. "I can toss it for you," he offered, eager to help in any way. He stood and found a nearby trash bin. As he returned, Oliver was softly humming some childish tune under his breath, and Sarah watched him with a protective fondness that made Nathan's chest ache. "Oliver," Sarah said gently, "we have to leave soon. I need to get ready for my next panel, and you have daycare activities, remember?" Oliver nodded, though he cast a curious glance at Nathan. "Will he come too?" She hesitated, her gaze flicking to Nathan. "He's busy with his own meetings," she said slowly. "But maybe we can arrange another time." Nathan cleared his throat, determined not to overstep. "You have your day planned, I understand. I'd love to see you again if that's okay with both of you." He tried to keep his voice casual, but the eagerness slipped through. Oliver's face lit up. "Mom, can we show him the big science place you said we might visit tomorrow? With all the stuff about planet Earth?" Nathan glanced at Sarah, heart quickening. "He's inviting me. He actually wants me around." But Sarah raised an eyebrow. "We were thinking about going to the Science Museum after the conference ends," she explained, addressing Nathan. "Oliver's been asking for weeks. I suppose it wouldn't hurt if you joined." Nathan's pulse thrummed with relief. "I'd love to, but only if you're sure." Sarah took a moment, studying Oliver's expectant expression. "All right," she said at last, though her tone carried a note of caution. "We'll figure out the details later. Let's just take this one step at a time." Oliver let out a small cheer, bouncing in his seat. Nathan couldn't help but smile, his worries briefly melting away under the child's enthusiasm. He found himself wondering if this was how normal life felt, planning a simple outing, anticipating the delight in a young one's eyes, but no moment lasted forever. As Oliver fidgeted, Sarah glanced at her watch. "We really have to go, kiddo," she said, standing up and gathering her bag. "Daycare closes soon, and I have that investor panel." Oliver slid down from his chair, hugging his dinosaur tight. He cast Nathan a final look, cautious yet curious. "Bye," he said simply. Nathan had to swallow around a lump in his throat. "Bye, Oliver," he replied softly. "Have a good rest of the day. I'll see you tomorrow." He glanced at Sarah, who nodded. "Tomorrow," she confirmed, her voice quieter now. "I'll text you the time." Without much fanfare, mother and child turned and headed toward the corridor, Oliver's small hand curled around Sarah's. Nathan sat there for several seconds after they disappeared from view, absorbing the flood of emotions coursing through him. He felt strangely lightheaded, as if he'd just undergone a major ordeal. "In a way I have," he thought. "I met my son for the first time." The rest of Nathan's day unfolded in a blur. He attended a few smaller breakout sessions, but his mind wandered constantly. The world of business that had once commanded his undivided attention now felt like background noise. Every text message from Sarah triggered a surge of anticipation. Though she didn't send much, just a brief note confirming the next day's plan, Nathan read it over and over, each word a reassurance that he wasn't dreaming. He tried to keep his schedule light. After politely excusing himself from another networking reception, he retreated to his suite, ignoring the stir of speculation from colleagues used to his unwavering presence at such events. Inside, he let himself exhale fully, pulling off his tie and setting aside his suit jacket. He flopped onto the sofa, phone in hand, replaying every detail of that short meeting with Oliver. The child's bright eyes, the question about dinosaurs, the shy grin. With a trembling breath, Nathan made a decision. He opened his laptop, intending to handle a business matter quickly. Instead, he found himself typing out a short email to his personal legal advisor. Subject: Urgent Personal Inquiry. Body: I need to ensure my will and any estate plans fully account for my son. Please schedule a private consultation as soon as possible. He hit send, heart hammering. This was something he'd never bothered to consider before. For all his success, he'd neglected the fundamental notion of providing for a family. The very idea that Oliver might need official acknowledgement, protection, or financial security in the worst-case scenario weighed heavily. I've missed too much already. At least I can do this part right. The rest of the evening was quiet. He settled for room service, picking idly at a grilled chicken dish while he scrolled through potential dinosaur-themed gifts online. Half of him worried such gestures would appear too showy or desperate, and yet he felt compelled to do something. He ended up bookmarking a few ideas, uncertain if he should even proceed without talking to Sarah first. Finally, he flopped onto the bed, letting exhaustion tug him under. Before drifting off, he briefly pictured tomorrow's outing at the Science Museum, hoping it would be the start of a new chapter, a chance to build in small steps what he had once thrown away. Morning dawned with a crisp, cool air hinting at the turn of seasons. Nathan woke early, dressing in a more casual outfit than usual. Dark jeans, a neat collared shirt, and a light jacket. Appropriate for a museum trip, he hoped. The mirror reflected a man who looked slightly out of place without his signature business suit. But he pressed on. This is about Oliver, he reminded himself, not about being the perfect CEO. He was finishing breakfast in the hotel lounge when his phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. "We'll meet you at the museum entrance at 10. Oliver's already bouncing off the walls with excitement. A grin spread across Nathan's face. His heart flipped. This is real. He typed a quick reply. "On my way. Thank you, Sarah." He set aside his coffee and hurried toward the exit, catching a taxi out front. The city roads, typically choked with rush-hour traffic, seemed to breeze by in his eagerness. Not even the swirl of random conference updates from his assistant, pinging him about missed calls and neglected appointments, could distract him now. The Science Museum rose before him, a grand modern building of steel and glass. Giant banners hung from its facade, showcasing cosmic exhibits, interactive technology, and the wonders of natural history. Nathan paid the taxi driver, stepping onto the sidewalk with a flutter of nerves. This is it. When he spotted Sarah and Oliver standing near the entrance, his breath caught. Oliver wore a bright yellow t-shirt adorned with a cartoon planet, and he hopped from foot to foot. Sarah, in casual jeans and a sweater, looked more relaxed than she had at the conference, though that guarded tension in her shoulders remained. She caught sight of Nathan and gave him a small nod. Oliver's face lit up. "He's here!" he exclaimed, running forward. Nathan crouched instinctively, arms open, unsure if the boy would jump into them. Instead, Oliver skidded to a halt just inches away, beaming up at him. "Hi!" Nathan's eyes misted with relief. "Hi!" he echoed. He glanced at Sarah, who was walking up with a calmer pace. "Morning," he greeted her softly. "Morning," she replied. "Thanks for coming. Oliver's been up since 6 talking about dinosaurs, planets, everything. He's excited." Oliver grabbed Nathan's hand without preamble, as if it was the most natural thing in the world. Nathan's chest tightened with emotion. "Come on, let's go see the planets," the boy insisted. Sarah shrugged with a faint smile. "He knows exactly where the space exhibit is. We came here once before." Nathan let Oliver lead, the small hand in his feeling surreal and precious. Inside, the museum bustled with families, tourists, and school groups. Vibrant displays and interactive stations lined the corridors. The air rang with children's laughter and the hum of enthusiastic chatter about science and discovery. It felt like a world away from the cutthroat halls of corporate power. They headed straight for a planetary display featuring massive models of the solar system, each planet suspended from the ceiling in an orbital dance. Oliver dashed from Mercury to Neptune, exclaiming random facts he'd memorized. Nathan followed, enthralled by how Oliver's eyes shone with pure wonder. "We learned about orbits in daycare," Oliver boasted, pointing to Saturn's rings, "and that some planets have lots of moons." Nathan smiled, hunkering down beside him. "That's right. Jupiter has like more than 70, I think. He wasn't entirely sure of the exact number, but the boy's face was priceless, lit up with curiosity. Sarah stood a few steps back, watching them. Nathan glanced at her, their eyes meeting for a moment in an unspoken exchange. She seemed pleased that Oliver was warming up, but still uncertain how all this would unfold. One step at a time, he reminded himself. They moved on to the interactive stations. Oliver dragged Nathan to a console that simulated launching a rocket. "Press that button!" Oliver shouted, excitement bubbling up in his voice. Nathan did, grinning as digital flames roared on the screen and a cartoon rocket soared skyward. The boy whooped, jumping in a small victory dance. At one point, they passed a gift shop. Oliver's gaze lingered on a display of plush comets and mini rover toys. Nathan's first instinct was to buy him something, anything he wanted, but he hesitated, glancing at Sarah. She offered a subtle shake of her head as if to say, "Don't overdo it." He nodded, understanding. Still, he mentally noted to ask her privately if a small souvenir would be acceptable. An hour and a half flew by in a blur of cosmic wonders and interactive screens. Occasionally, other families looked at them with mild curiosity, possibly recognizing Nathan from financial news. But he ignored the stares, too focused on Oliver's radiant enthusiasm. At one station, Oliver slipped his hand back into Nathan's, a simple gesture that made Nathan's heart thunder. The child was accepting him, at least for this moment. Eventually, Oliver tugged on Sarah's sweater, announcing he was hungry. They found the museum cafe, a brightly lit area with child-friendly meals. Sarah guided Oliver to pick something, then turned to Nathan. "I guess we can grab a table," she said, voice quiet. "We'll have to figure out how to handle all this long-term." He nodded carefully. "I'm ready to figure it out if you are." They settled into a small table by the window. Oliver tore open a packet of crayons that came with his meal, scribbling dinosaurs and planets on the paper placemat. Nathan watched, enthralled by every detail. "This is fatherhood, isn't it?" he thought. Moments of quiet normalcy where a child draws and the world feels at peace. Between bites of chicken nuggets, Oliver looked up. "Are you going to come to my house someday?" he asked innocently, glancing at Nathan, then at Sarah. "I have a big box of dinos we could play with." A flash of worry passed over Sarah's face. Nathan recognized her hesitation. Inviting him into their personal space was a significant step. But she pressed her lips together and said, "We'll see, honey. Maybe soon." Nathan caught her eye, nodding in deference to her boundaries. The fact that Oliver was even asking felt like a gift. He yearned to say yes immediately, but he didn't want to push. He knew trust took time to build. After lunch, they wandered through a few more exhibits, soaking in the last bit of wonder the museum had to offer. Eventually, Oliver's energy dipped. He rubbed his eyes, a sure sign of nap time approaching. Sarah checked her phone, sighing. "We should probably get going," she said gently. "It's time for him to rest, and I—" She paused, giving Nathan a measured look. "I have a few errands before tomorrow. Another investor wants a follow-up." Nathan realized the day was ending, and a pang of regret hit him. He didn't want this fleeting bubble of connection to pop, but Oliver was drooping by the minute. "Of course," he said, kneeling beside Oliver. "Hey, buddy, I had a great time today. Thank you for showing me around." Oliver yawned, nodding. "Bye," he mumbled. "We can do more dinosaurs next time, right?" "Absolutely," Nathan promised softly. Then, at a loss for what else to do, he gently placed a hand on Oliver's shoulder. Sarah allowed it. "You take care, okay?" The boy nodded again, then turned and tucked himself against Sarah's leg, eyes half closed. Sarah lifted him, balancing him on her hip. Meeting Nathan's gaze, she spoke quietly. "Thank you for being patient with him." He swallowed, touched by her words. "I'm grateful you gave me the chance." They exchanged phone numbers once more, reaffirming the open line of communication. Then Sarah walked away, Oliver's head resting on her shoulder. Nathan watched them disappear into the flow of families near the entrance, fighting the urge to call after them. The museum lights shone overhead, but he felt a subtle ache in his chest. This was the first real day he'd spent with his child. Don't let it be the last, he thought fiercely. With a lingering glance at the exhibit that had brought them together, Nathan left the building. Outside, a crisp breeze greeted him. He pulled out his phone, ignoring the barrage of corporate notifications, the missed calls from business associates. Instead, he typed a quick message to Sarah. "Thanks again for today. If Oliver needs anything, anytime, please let me know. I'm here." He hit send, exhaling as if he'd taken another step forward on an uncharted path. One day at a time, he reminded himself, and for once in his life, that felt like enough. "Would you like me to continue with section 710? Você disse, yes, solicitação de promode. Terminou de refletir. Section 710, approximately 1,000 words. Nathan's steps echoed through the lobby of his luxury hotel, his mind still replaying the morning's visit to the Science Museum. Every moment with Oliver, the excitement in the planetarium, the way the boy had grasped his hand, lingered like an aftertaste of something unexpectedly sweet. He slipped into the elevator and pressed the button for his suite, ignoring the curious glances from other guests. His phone buzzed in his pocket, but he waited until he was alone in the elevator to check. A text from Sarah. "Oliver conked out almost as soon as we got home. He had a blast. Thanks for being patient with him, and with me. We'll talk soon." Nathan's lips curved into a small, grateful smile. The mere fact she was reaching out so openly felt like a triumph. He tapped a reply, short and warm, then tucked the phone away. As the elevator climbed, he allowed himself to feel something he'd rarely felt in years. Genuine optimism, unconnected to business performance or stock market surges. When he reached the suite, however, reality intruded. A cluster of documents sat on the dining table, placed there by his assistant. Each folder was marked urgent in bold letters. Meanwhile, his phone started buzzing with calls from senior staff. The day's respite was over. Cross Ventures demanded its leader. He settled behind the table, exhaling. "If I'm going to be part of Oliver's life, I need to keep the empire stable too," he reminded himself. Throwing on his reading glasses, he began sifting through the pile. Europe Telecom merger. The final legal framework was ready for his signature, pending any last adjustments. International capital infusion. 2 major investors awaited a conference call to finalize terms. Pending lawsuit in Asia. A competitor was claiming patent infringement. His legal team needed a decision on whether to settle or fight. It was the usual corporate chaos, once thrilling, now tinged with a sense of distraction. He worked methodically, making notes, emailing subordinates, and scheduling calls. Hours bled away. By late afternoon, he glanced up, eyes burning from the screen. "I used to do this around the clock without complaint," he thought wryly. Now he found his mind drifting to Oliver's laugh or the determined spark in Sarah's eyes. Shortly before evening, he completed a conference call with the major investors. It went well. They committed to a multi-million-dollar injection that would fund new R&D. Typically, he would celebrate such a victory, but the usual pride felt muted. He realized a startling truth. No matter how massive the deal, it no longer felt like the sole measure of his worth. Strange how life shifts, he mused. A knock sounded at the suite door. Standing, he walked over and peered through the peephole. His assistant, Avery, waited outside, holding a slim portfolio. Nathan opened the door, allowing Avery to step in. "Mr. Cross," Avery began, voice calm and professional. "Apologies for interrupting. I have the updated itinerary for tomorrow's final sessions at the conference. Plus, there's a private dinner invitation from the mayor and a few top CEOs. He handed over the portfolio, then hesitated. We also received a call from your personal legal advisor regarding an urgent personal matter you emailed about. She wants to schedule an appointment. Nathan felt a pang, remembering the message about updating his estate plans and acknowledging Oliver. He glanced at Avery. Yes, let's do that. Tell her I'm available tomorrow evening after the conference ends. Avery nodded, making a quick note on a tablet. Certainly, sir. Anything else? Nathan paused, considering how much to reveal. You'll see some changes soon in my personal schedule, Avery. Family-related. I'll need more flexibility than usual. Keep that in mind when booking any future engagements. Avery's expression remained neutral, but curiosity sparked in his eyes. He'd been Nathan's assistant for a few months and was used to the man's demanding pace. This shift in tone was new. Understood, sir. I'll adapt accordingly. They wrapped up a few more logistical details and Avery left. Alone again, Nathan stared at the city lights through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Changing his personal schedule was step one. But how did one actually integrate fatherhood into the life of an international mogul? One day at a time, he reminded himself. The same way I began building cross-ventures, but now with far more at stake. That evening, he forced himself to attend a final conference reception. It took place in the hotel's grand ballroom, a shimmering sea of designer suits and cocktail dresses. Chandeliers cast warm light over clusters of deal-makers. Champagne glasses clinked, and corporate buzzwords filled the air. Nathan moved from circle to circle, shaking hands, exchanging pleasantries, half his mind miles away. Mr. Cross, said a sleek-haired executive from a biotech firm, we heard rumors you might invest in the healthcare sector next quarter. Care to comment? Nathan offered a polite, non-committal grin. Always exploring possibilities, he replied. Healthcare is crucial, especially new models and technologies. The executive beamed, launching into a pitch about gene therapies. Normally, Nathan would have engaged deeply, but tonight he found himself thinking about how Morgan Health Innovations might intersect with such developments. Sarah's company is also in healthcare, more from a services angle. Could Cross Ventures support that? A fleeting idea sparked, but he shoved it aside, remembering Sarah's fierce independence. She would resent any attempt to overshadow her venture, or to use it as a token philanthropic project. Eventually, he excused himself from the conversation, stepping away to a quieter corner. An older colleague sidled up, swirling a glass of whiskey. Nathan, he greeted, voice warm. Heard you left that last meeting early. Everything okay? Nathan recognized the man. Gerald Price, a long-standing board member. He'd known Nathan for years and had occasionally served as a mentor figure. The lines on Gerald's face spoke of countless deals weathered side by side. Nathan gave him a tight smile. All good, Gerald. Just had personal matters. Gerald studied him shrewdly. Personal matters, huh? You rarely left a meeting in the middle before. Nathan could sense genuine concern behind the remark. For a moment, he debated keeping it private, but if there was anyone in the corporate world he trusted not to leak this, it was Gerald. I found out I'm a father, he said softly. A 4-year-old. Gerald blinked in surprise, then let out a low whistle. Well, that's news. He paused, considering. That explains a thing or two about your demeanor these past days. Congratulations, I suppose? Nathan managed a small smile. Yes, it's complicated, but I'm happy to have the chance to know him. Gerald sipped his whiskey, nodding thoughtfully. Kids change everything, Nathan. Nothing in business quite prepares you for fatherhood, but you have a good heart under all that ambition, so you'll find your way. The simple kindness in those words took Nathan aback. He inhaled deeply, letting relief wash over him. Thanks, Gerald. With a fatherly pat on Nathan's shoulder, Gerald offered one final piece of wisdom. Don't let business cheat you out of time with him. We old folks always say we regret the moments missed, not the deals lost. Later that night, back in his suite, Nathan settled at his desk. He'd meant to review some final documents, but his eyes drifted again to the dinosaur-themed website he'd bookmarked. He remembered Oliver's mention of stuffed dinos and the rocket console. I could send him a small gift, he thought. Yet Sarah's cautious glance at the museum gift shop replayed in his mind. He didn't want to overstep, showering Oliver with lavish presents. Maybe something simpler, more personal. In a sudden burst of inspiration, he typed a quick note on his phone. To Sarah, "Hey, I know I asked about possibly giving Oliver a small gift. Nothing too big, I promise. I'd like it to be something he really enjoys. Any suggestions? If it's too soon, I understand." He hovered over the send button, then pressed it. Anxiety twisted in his gut. Would she think he was trying to buy Oliver's affection? He hoped not. All he wanted was to show genuine care. He set his phone aside, returning to business emails. It was past midnight when her reply chimed in. "He's obsessed with building sets right now. Anything with blocks or magnets. Doesn't have to be fancy. But remember, keep it small." Nathan's face lit up. A sense of gratitude washed over him. She's letting me in, he realized. Quickly, he found a child-friendly building set online, colorful yet not overly extravagant, and arranged for delivery to her address with a gentle note. He kept it intentionally modest, a single set that looked fun but not overwhelming. Before bed, he read through a bedtime story that he downloaded on his tablet, a random pic from the children's section. The characters were anthropomorphic dinosaurs, ironically enough. He chuckled at the silly illustrations, wondering if Oliver might find them amusing. For once in his life, a business titan, he found himself practicing the inflections of a children's bedtime story. Maybe one day I can read to him myself, he thought. The idea both thrilled and terrified him. In the days that followed, the conference concluded, and many attendees departed. Nathan stayed behind for additional meetings and final negotiations. He texted with Sarah here and there, short updates, glimpses into Oliver's day, occasional pictures of the child engrossed in some activity. Each ping of his phone brought a surge of warmth, and each time he responded with genuine interest, asking about Oliver's new creations or simply thanking Sarah for sharing. But life wasn't a fairy tale. Business obligations loomed large. Cross ventures demanded his presence in another city soon. He dreaded the thought of leaving town when his relationship with Oliver was still so fragile. One morning, while scanning flight schedules, he decided to call Sarah directly. She answered after a couple of rings. "Hey," she said, voice subdued. He could hear faint noise in the background, maybe Oliver playing. "Everything okay?" He swallowed. "Yes and no. I need to travel for a week. Urgent business in London. I hate to vanish after just starting to know him. I was wondering if maybe we could do a quick video call while I'm gone, so he doesn't think I disappeared." A long silence followed. Nathan worried he'd pushed too far, but then Sarah let out a soft breath. "That might be okay. I'd have to explain it to Oliver. He's never done a video call with someone like this. But I'm willing to try, if you're serious." Relief flushed through him. "I'm very serious. I can adjust my schedule around whatever time is best for you two." She hesitated. "All right, let me talk to him. We'll figure out a day and time. You know, it's big for him too. He's still understanding the idea that he has a dad who wants to be around." Nathan's throat tightened. "I won't let him down." "I know," Sarah whispered, her words a cautious acknowledgement. "Safe travels." The call ended with a promise to coordinate, leaving Nathan feeling buoyed. For all the multi-million-dollar deals he'd ever secured, none felt as vital as the simple promise of a video call with his son. He booked his flight for the following day, ignoring the swirl of anxiety about balancing fatherhood with global commitments. "I'll find a way," he vowed silently. As he packed that night, he carefully placed a children's storybook, one he'd picked up at a local shop, into his carry-on. The idea was to be ready for any impromptu story time if Oliver asked during the video call. It was a small, tender gesture that felt strangely more significant than any corporate document he carried. Early the next morning, he boarded his plane, leaving behind the city where he'd discovered the most life-altering truth. The jet roared into the sky, carrying him across oceans for the next round of negotiations, yet in his heart, an invisible tether stretched back to that bright-eyed boy and the strong-willed mother who had let him back into their world, an unlikely foundation upon which he now hoped to build a future filled with more than just profit margins. Would you like me to continue with section 8 to 10? Você diz, yes, section 8 to 10. Pensou por tum 27's, section 8 to 10, approximately 1,000 words. London greeted Nathan with a chill wind and a drizzle that blurred the city lights outside his hotel window. He'd always appreciated this metropolis, an epicenter of global finance where deals were closed in elegant boardrooms overlooking the Thames. Ordinarily, such a trip filled him with adrenaline and excitement, but this time, his heart remained tethered elsewhere. The first few days passed in a swirl of high-level negotiations. He and his team met with representatives from a European conglomerate eager to secure a joint venture with Cross Ventures. The stakes were high, a potential multi-billion-dollar collaboration to expand into cutting-edge technologies. Nathan, ever the diplomat, navigated the talks with polished ease, yet he felt a nagging restlessness underneath every conversation. When he wasn't in meetings, he sat in his hotel suite reviewing proposals or finalizing documents. But his mind drifted to Oliver. What was the boy doing today? Building towers with blocks? Drawing dinosaur pictures? The ache of missing him grew every hour, heightened by the time difference that limited when he could message Sarah. Finally, on the evening of the third day, he was able to schedule the promised video call. It was nearly 8 p.m. London time, which meant early afternoon in Sarah's city. Sitting at the small desk in his suite, Nathan positioned his laptop so the lighting was good and the background was free of clutter. His heart pounded like he was about to deliver a keynote speech to thousands. A soft ping announced the incoming call. He clicked to accept. Breath held. The screen lit up, revealing Sarah sitting on a couch. Next to her was Oliver clutching his favorite stuffed dinosaur. For a moment, they just looked at each other, mother, child, and the man halfway around the world. "Hi," Nathan managed, forcing a steady voice. "It's good to see you." Oliver squinted at the screen. "Mom, he's so big on the computer," he exclaimed, leaning forward. "How are you in there?" He knocked the dinosaur against the screen gently, as if testing the barrier. Sarah let out a gentle laugh. "He's not inside the computer, honey. It's like a window we can talk through." Oliver looked intrigued. "Can you see me?" he asked, waving the dinosaur in front of the camera. Nathan couldn't contain his grin. "I can, and I see your dinosaur too. Looks like it's ready to eat the camera." Oliver giggled, revealing a gap where a baby tooth had recently fallen out. Nathan's heart squeezed, realizing just how many small milestones he'd missed. He forced a warm smile, hoping to cover up the pang of regret. They chatted casually for a few minutes. Oliver showed Nathan a block tower he had built, proudly announcing it was the biggest yet. Nathan asked questions about which dinosaurs lived on top of the tower, and Oliver obligingly rattled off names with bright enthusiasm. Despite the physical distance, there was an intimacy in seeing the child's living space, a comfortable, cozy corner of the house with toys scattered around. Sarah mostly watched quietly, guiding Oliver to hold the camera steady or speak louder. Occasionally she chimed in with a short explanation of what Oliver had been up to, playdates, a new preschool activity, funny things he said at dinner. Nathan soaked up every detail like parched earth welcoming rain. When Oliver wandered off to grab a new toy, Sarah slid into view, keeping her voice low. "He's having fun," she told Nathan. "He insisted on telling you about that tower." Nathan's voice turned soft. "I'm glad. Thank you for letting me do this. It means a lot." She nodded, emotions flickering in her eyes. "He looks forward to these calls. He draws pictures in the morning and says, I'm going to show Dad tonight. A pause. He started calling you Dad on his own. I didn't push that. Nathan felt tears prickling behind his eyes. I love hearing it. Thank you for not stopping him. Sarah shook her head as if uncertain how to respond. Then Oliver returned, wielding a plastic rocket. The call continued for another 10 minutes, Oliver sharing small stories and ideas, each one punctuating the strangeness of Nathan's situation. A father, yet an ocean away. Eventually, the boy grew fidgety. "Can we watch cartoons now, Mom?" he asked. Sarah glanced at Nathan apologetically. "He's had a long day," she said. "I should let you get back to your work, too." They wrapped up goodbyes, Oliver cheerily waving the rocket. Nathan promised to call again soon. After the screen went dark, he remained at his desk, emotionally drained in a way that was both painful and oddly fulfilling. For the next few days, these short video calls became a routine, each one a reminder that a piece of his heart now lay on the other side of the planet. Meanwhile, negotiations in London escalated. Late-night meetings, strategic dinners, working breakfasts. Nathan juggled them all with habitual competence, yet his colleagues noticed his new habit of checking the clock every few hours or sneaking quick messages when schedules allowed. Some teased him good-naturedly, suspecting he'd fallen in love. "They're not entirely wrong," he thought with a wistful smile. "But it's a different kind of love, a more important one." He discovered an unexpected benefit to fatherhood, a fresh perspective on business. Where once he might have spent endless hours debating a minor deal point, he now found himself cutting to the chase. "Let's finalize these details and move on," he'd say, pushing for efficiency. With his team, he was more decisive, less tolerant of corporate posturing. He had a new awareness that time away from Oliver was no longer an option he could squander. At the same time, he felt an ache whenever the negotiations ran late, disrupting the chance to call Oliver. On one such evening, he rushed back to his suite, only to see that Sarah had messaged an hour earlier. "Oliver's asleep now. Maybe tomorrow." He stared at the phone, a hollow feeling settling in his gut. I missed it. He'd been so close to finishing the deal that he hadn't excused himself from the meeting in time. "That's not going to happen again," he vowed. His resolve helped speed the negotiations. By the end of the week, Cross Ventures and the European conglomerate reached a preliminary agreement. Smiling faces, handshakes, photo ops, everyone celebrated this milestone. But Nathan's greatest relief was personal. It meant he could fly home sooner. One final task remained before departure. Early one morning, Nathan walked into a discreet law office in London's financial district. His personal legal advisor, a poised woman named Elise, greeted him with polite formality. "Mr. Cross, thank you for coming in. I've prepared the documents as requested." He followed her to a private conference room. The windows overlooked the bustling city streets below. Elise opened a leather-bound folder, revealing official paperwork. "This ensures your estate and legal framework acknowledge Oliver as your son. It also sets aside an immediate trust fund. We can finalize once you provide a valid birth certificate and paternity acknowledgement from Ms. Morgan." Nathan's chest tightened. "I'll arrange whatever is needed. I want no obstacles for him, legally, financially, or otherwise." Elise nodded. "One step at a time. We can include provisions for guardianship if you wish, though that would require Ms. Morgan's consent." Nathan rubbed his temples. "I'll talk to her, but let's get the basic structures in place first." He signed a flurry of documents, each pen stroke a new commitment to Oliver's security and future. Part of him felt apprehensive about how Sarah might react. She was proud, not someone who'd appreciate a paternalistic approach. "I have to explain it carefully," he thought. "Make her see I'm not trying to control anything, just protect Oliver." Elise wrapped up, placing the file in a sealed envelope. "Congratulations on this step, Mr. Cross. If there's anything else, that will be all for now. Thank you." He offered a handshake, then hurried out, mind spinning. Another piece of fatherhood locked into place. Soon I'll be heading back, he reminded himself. I need to talk to Sarah honestly about these documents. At Heathrow Airport, Nathan boarded a red-eye flight. As the plane soared above the Atlantic, he stared out at the dark sky, thinking about how drastically his life had changed. Instead of fixating on share prices and future expansions, he found himself rehearsing conversations with Oliver. Maybe I'll read him that bedtime story tomorrow night if the time zones line up. A small smile tugged at the corners of his mouth. He tried to rest, but sleep came fitfully. Dreams of Oliver laughing in a planetarium merged with nightmares of missing more milestones, haunting him. By the time the plane landed back home, he was exhausted, yet oddly energized by the desire to see his son in person again. Collecting his luggage, he messaged Sarah. Just landed. How are you two? Her reply came swiftly. We're good. Oliver's busy with preschool and I have a full day, but we can talk later. Glad you're home safe. That single line, we can talk later, reassured him. They were building something real, step by step. He just hoped his latest business commitments wouldn't blow up in his face and steal more time from the fragile new bond forming with Oliver. Days passed in a hectic blur as Nathan reclaimed the reins of Cross Ventures at headquarters. There were countless briefings to deliver, new R&D projects to approve, and the near-complete telecom merger to finalize. Yet he found pockets of time, whether at lunch or late evenings, to text Sarah or slip in a short video chat. Often Oliver would proudly show him a new drawing or toy. Each call was brief but meaningful, a lifeline bridging their worlds. Still, an undercurrent of tension lingered. Neither he nor Sarah had mentioned the legal documents. He knew he had to bring it up eventually, and he dreaded how she might react. So one evening, summoning his courage, he asked if they could meet face-to-face without Oliver to discuss important matters. Sarah, sounding wary, agreed. They settled on a quiet cafe near her neighborhood. He arrived first, choosing a table in a corner away from prying eyes. The place had a warm, homey feel. Worn wooden floors, chalkboard menus, soft jazz playing in the background. When Sarah walked in, wearing a simple blouse and jeans, she looked different from the poised conference professional. More approachable, yet still guarded. She's here. That's a start, he told himself. They exchanged polite greetings, ordered coffee, and settled in. Sarah placed her phone face down on the table, a silent signal of full attention. So, she said, her tone crisp but civil, you said this was important. Nathan nodded, heart thumping. It is, he admitted. I've been working on some legal steps to acknowledge Oliver formally as my son, estate planning, trust funds, that sort of thing. Her eyes narrowed slightly. Behind my back? She asked, not angrily, but with a definite edge. Not behind your back, he clarified quickly, lifting both hands. I plan to explain everything. I just wanted to have the framework in place so there's no confusion about my intentions. I'm not trying to take him away or override your decisions, I swear. Sarah exhaled, studying him. You're saying you want to provide for him financially? Yes, Nathan answered. And more. I want him to have the same legal recognition as any child of mine would. You keep full custody, unless at some point we discuss something else. But I need to know he's protected. If something happens to me, or if we ever hit a legal snag, I don't want Oliver left in a gray area. She took a sip of her coffee, composure returning. Well, I suppose it makes sense, she said slowly. But I'll want to review all documents, and if anything suggests you can swoop in and dictate our lives, you have my word. That's not my goal, Nathan broke in. This is just security, not control. Oliver stays with you. I just want him covered in every possible scenario. Sarah tapped her foot under the table, a sign of her lingering apprehension. All right, I appreciate you telling me. Let's see the paperwork. I'll have my own lawyer check it. No surprises, okay? Relief spread through him. Agreed. No surprises. They sipped their coffees in a silence that felt more companionable than before. Finally, Sarah spoke up. Look, I know you have resources that can make Oliver's life easier. I'm not ungrateful, but I don't want him growing up thinking money is everything. He needs you present in more ways than a trust fund." Nathan nodded, the truth of her words resonating deeply. "I understand. I plan to be there. I'm trying to shift my schedule, delegate more so I'm not constantly on a plane. It'll take time, but I'm committed." She studied his face, maybe seeing the earnestness. "Good," she whispered. Setting her coffee cup down, she glanced at the time. "I need to pick Oliver up soon." Nathan mustered a soft smile. "Thank you for coming, and for being open to this." Sarah stood, gathering her purse. "Let's just keep communicating," she said. "We owe that to Oliver." He rose as well, walking her to the door. Outside, the afternoon light cast a warm glow on the sidewalk. Before parting, Sarah turned, meeting his gaze one more time. Something unspoken passed between them, a cautious hope. Then she was gone, heading down the street toward a future neither of them could fully predict. Nathan lingered for a moment, heart steadied by the steps they had taken. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. With each new conversation, each legal arrangement, each tender exchange with Oliver, they were weaving a new family narrative, fragile but precious. "Would you like me to continue with section 910? Você disse, yes, solicitação de pro mod. Terminou de refletir, section 9 and 10, approximately 1,000 words. The next few weeks tested Nathan's ability to juggle his colossal corporate life with the fragile new bonds he was forging. On one hand, there were urgent tasks at Cross Ventures, finalizing the European telecom merger, initiating a new R&D division, and dealing with a sudden PR snag involving a former partner. On the other hand, his emotional compass pulled him toward Sarah and Oliver, toward every chance to deepen their tentative family ties. He started by making a conscious change, delegating more day-to-day decisions to his senior team, where once he had insisted on personally reviewing every contract, he learned to trust his top executives. It was a subtle shift, but it freed pockets of time in his calendar that he could dedicate to Oliver. Sarah noticed. In their texts, she occasionally remarked, "You seem more available these days." He'd respond with something like, "Trying to be more human." She'd reply with a short but telling, "Keep it up." Despite the busyness, Nathan still found moments to slip away to Sarah's neighborhood. Occasionally, he'd meet Oliver at a local park. Those playdates felt like a crash course in fatherhood. One afternoon, Oliver insisted they play chase among the trees. Nathan, in his tailored slacks, gamely jogged around, ignoring the curious stares of passers-by who recognized the powerful CEO. Oliver's laughter was payment enough. Meanwhile, Sarah, watchful from a bench, offered him small pointers. "He's shy about climbing the big slide. Don't push him too hard." Or, "He loves it when you pretend the dinosaur is the tagger." Slowly, Nathan learned Oliver's rhythms, the difference between gentle encouragement and too much pressure. Often he'd find himself out of breath or awkwardly messing up a preschool game, but each minute felt precious. One Saturday, after a lively morning at the playground, Sarah invited Nathan back to her place for a simple lunch. He tried not to show his nerves when they stepped into the cozy living room. Toys were neatly organized in bins, children's books lined a small shelf, and the walls carried a few framed photos. Sarah with Oliver, or Oliver at various milestones. None of Nathan, of course. But seeing that homey space made his chest tighten with longing. Oliver ran to show him a hand-painted dinosaur picture taped on the fridge. Meanwhile, Sarah poured lemonade in the kitchen. "You can sit," she said, waving him toward the small dining table. Her tone was neutral, but the invitation was progress. This was the first time he'd seen the inside of their home. They ate grilled cheese sandwiches and carrot sticks, with Oliver proudly chewing while explaining how, "Dad says I can build tall towers if I focus." The child's unfiltered reference to him as Dad still sent a jolt through Nathan. He cleared his throat, trying to keep his composure. "Focus is key," he affirmed, grinning. "But you also have to have fun, right?" Sarah raised an eyebrow, but a flicker of amusement crossed her face. He's been on a building kick for months. I think your small gift of those magnet blocks is fueling the obsession. Nathan smiled sheepishly. Glad it was the right choice. I just wanted him to have something hands-on. I remember how he loved building at the museum. Oliver finished his sandwich and trotted off to play in the living room, leaving the two adults at the table. The afternoon light spilled through the window, illuminating their half-eaten plates. A subtle tension thickened the air. This was the first time they'd truly been alone, inside her home, with no immediate crisis or child's chatter to buffer them. "Thanks for lunch," Nathan said softly, trying to break the ice. "I appreciate you letting me be here." Sarah studied him. "I wasn't sure if I'd ever do this," she admitted. "For a long time I told myself you'd never be welcome in our lives. Now, well, seeing how Oliver looks at you, I can't deny that maybe this is what he needs." He set down his glass of lemonade. "I'm grateful for the chance, and I know I have a lot to make up for." She exhaled, gaze shifting to the living room where Oliver was building a tower, humming to himself. "Just don't disappoint him," she repeated her usual warning, though the edge had softened. "Kids see the world with so much trust. If you vanish again—" "I won't," he interjected, voice resolute. "Even if it means cutting back on my work or traveling less, I'll do it. I can't miss any more of his life." Sarah nodded, letting the conversation pause. Then she changed the topic, asking about the next steps with the estate paperwork. Nathan explained he'd lined up a meeting with her lawyer so they could review everything together. She agreed to set a date, though her expression turned cautious whenever finances and legalities were mentioned. Before Nathan left that day, Oliver showed him a picture he'd drawn of a tall office building, with 3 stick figures, one labeled me, one labeled Mom, and one labeled Dad, all holding hands at the base of the skyscraper. Something about that simple image made Nathan's throat tighten. He praised Oliver for his artwork, swallowing a surge of emotion. As time flowed on, a new normal settled in. Nathan continued working tirelessly at Cross Ventures, but now he insisted on protected hours. Certain evenings were blocked off for a weekly dinner with Sarah and Oliver or a remote story time if Nathan was traveling. At first, the board raised eyebrows. "We need you in these late negotiations." But Nathan held firm. Gerald Price quietly backed him, reminding the others that a happy CEO was often a more effective one. Oliver's preschool hosted a family day. Sarah mentioned it offhand, not expecting Nathan's interest, but he immediately asked if he could attend. She hesitated. "Some of the other parents might be curious if you show up," but he insisted gently. "I want to be there." The event fell on a Wednesday afternoon, an obstacle in the typical corporate schedule. Nathan rearranged a key meeting and arrived at the small school feeling oddly nervous. The building was a burst of color, handprints on walls, crayon drawings taped to doors, and a cheerful hum of children's laughter. When Oliver spotted him, the boy lit up like a star. "Dad, over here!" he called, waving from a little circle of parents and kids. Nathan crossed the room, heart pounding. Sarah, kneeling nearby, offered a faint smile. The teacher led them through group songs and a silly craft project. Nathan, out of his element, gamely tried to fit the right puzzle pieces, delighting Oliver. Some parents recognized Nathan from financial headlines, but no one made a fuss. Instead, they chatted about typical parent stuff. "Is your kid sleeping well? Are they into sports yet?" He found himself answering questions like any father would, feeling a surreal sense of belonging. At the end of the event, Oliver proudly introduced his father to classmates. "He builds towers in real life," Oliver insisted, "but with grown-up money." Nathan blushed, explaining that he helped companies do projects. The kids seemed only half interested, more focused on the promise of snacks. Sarah observed these interactions, a strange mixture of pride and apprehension flickering in her expression. Nathan caught her eye, and she nodded almost imperceptibly, a silent acknowledgement that this was good for Oliver. As they left, Oliver chattered happily about how Mom and Dad both came to school. A tiny thrill shot through Nathan every time Oliver said Mom and Dad, as if he and Sarah were a team again, even though the reality was more complicated. But complications inevitably arose. One evening, a call from CrossVenture's legal department informed Nathan of an unexpected breach of contract by a major partner. The lawsuit in Asia intensified. Urgent international travel was required to contain the fallout. Nathan's heart sank, recalling how that would disrupt the routine he and Oliver had begun to cherish. He spent hours on conference calls, frantically negotiating, trying to avoid another extended absence. Meanwhile, Sarah texted him updates. "Oliver was looking forward to your story time tonight. He's disappointed you're working late." Each message felt like a small dagger of guilt. Finally, the crisis escalated to a point where Nathan had no choice but to fly out. He broke the news to Sarah. "I'm sorry. I have to go. It might be a week, maybe 2. He heard the weariness in his own voice. "I'll call, but the time zone difference might be tough." Sarah's response was calm, yet tinged with that same warning. "Don't vanish on us completely. Even if it's just a short video call, try. Oliver will miss you." The weight of that responsibility pressed on Nathan as he packed. He remembered how, months ago, he never second-guessed such a trip. Work always came first. Now leaving felt like tearing away from something vital. "I can't let him think I'm choosing business over him again," he reminded himself, vowing to maintain regular contact, no matter the logistical hurdles. Late that night, as he prepared for an early flight, Nathan found Oliver's latest drawing on his phone. Sarah had snapped a photo of it. The picture showed 3 figures again, but this time they stood near an airplane. Oliver scrawled the words, "Bye, Dad," above the plane's wing. A simple child's depiction, heartbreakingly direct. Nathan stared at it for a long time, fighting the impulse to cancel his trip. But the meltdown in Asia threatened hundreds of jobs, millions of dollars. He couldn't just ignore it. Balance, he told himself. "I have to find balance." He typed a reply to Sarah. "Thank him for the picture. Tell him I'll be back as soon as I can. Promise." As he set his phone aside, he realized fatherhood was no easier than running an empire. Both demanded sacrifice. But whereas business had once consumed him entirely, now every deal, every negotiation, felt like it had to measure up against the small, hopeful face of a 4-year-old child. He prayed silently that, in the end, Oliver would never again feel abandoned. And with that hope, he laid down, mentally rehearsing how to keep that promise alive, even if it meant rewriting the rules of his entire life. "Would you like me to continue with section 1010? Você disse, yes. Solicitação de O1 Promode. Terminou de refletir, section 1010. Approximately 1,000 words. The jet's engines roared as Nathan's plane ascended into the sky, carrying him halfway across the globe. From his seat by the window, he stared at a cloud-laden horizon, phone in hand, rereading the small messages Sarah had sent that morning. Already he felt a gnawing sense of absence. This trip, what should have been just another line item in his schedule, now felt like a weight dragging him away from a new life he was struggling to build. He closed his eyes, recalling Oliver's simple, "Bye, Dad" drawing. A pang of guilt made his chest constrict. "I promised him I wouldn't vanish," he reminded himself. No matter how pressing the meltdown in Asia, he would keep contact. That vow fueled him as he opened his laptop, drafting instructions for his staff. Delegate more, expedite negotiations, minimize the time abroad. If being a father had taught him anything so far, it was the urgency of family over perpetual corporate entanglements. Upon landing, Nathan was swept into a maelstrom of corporate chaos. The local partner had defaulted on a key obligation, triggering suits and countersuits. CrossVentures faced accusations of overreach. Lawyers sparred, and shareholders hovered anxiously. In a downtown skyscraper overlooking a neon-lit city, Nathan gathered with a war room team of attorneys, translating frantic updates into strategies. Days blurred as he hopped from meeting to meeting. Though physically present, his mind was never fully in the room. Late at night, he returned to an upscale hotel suite where lights from the city's skyline blinked like scattered gems. He would shower away the tension, then check the clock, nearly midday for Oliver. He called, or at least messaged, whenever he could. Sometimes Sarah answered, setting the phone so Oliver could share a new Lego creation or talk about a cartoon he'd seen. Often the calls were brief, overshadowed by urgent emails demanding Nathan's attention. Yet each glimpse of Oliver's smile was an anchor in the storm. One night, Nathan ended a grueling negotiation at nearly midnight local time. Exhaustion weighed on him like a lead blanket, but he refused to go to bed without hearing Oliver's voice. Summoning a final burst of energy, he dialed. Sarah's tired face filled the screen. "Hey," she greeted softly, stepping away from a lamp's glow. It's past Oliver's bedtime, but he's still awake reading a picture book. "Want me to bring the phone to him?" Nathan's shoulders sagged with relief. "Please," he whispered. "I won't keep him up long." Moments later, Oliver's sleepy face appeared, eyes half-lidded, hair sticking out at odd angles. "Hi, Dad," he mumbled. "I was waiting for you." Nathan's chest clenched. He offered a gentle smile. "I'm here, buddy. Sorry it's so late. How was your day?" Oliver yawned. "We had show and tell at school. I showed the magnet blocks we built together." He paused, scowling at the camera. "When are you coming back?" Nathan swallowed. "Soon," he said, voice catching. "I'm working hard so I can be back with you. Maybe just a few more days." Oliver nodded, rubbing his eyes. "Okay, I'm sleepy. Night, Dad." And with that, he handed the phone back to Sarah. The call ended quickly, leaving Nathan staring at his reflection in the black screen. "I was waiting for you," Oliver had said. His son had battled sleep in hopes of hearing him. "I can't keep doing this forever," Nathan thought. "It's not fair to him." Despite the swirling crisis, Nathan pressed for solutions with ruthless efficiency. Where his younger self might have thrived on extended legal battles, he now sought compromise. He hammered out an agreement that would salvage the partnership in a scaled-down form. Rival companies balked at the speed, but he forced a settlement. Cross Ventures would take a temporary financial hit, but it prevented a drawn-out lawsuit. Better to lose a fraction now than risk months more away from Oliver. Within 6 days, the meltdown was contained. That was enough. Though not every detail was perfect, Nathan boarded a return flight. During the journey, he stared at the seatback monitor, feeling relief wash through him. The moment the plane landed, he fired off a message to Sarah. "I'm home tomorrow morning. If you and Oliver are free in the afternoon, I'd love to see you both." She responded quickly. "He's got preschool, but we can be around after 3. Let's meet at our house." Nathan's heart thumped. It was the first time she'd offered a direct invitation for him to come by, without any disclaimers or immediate errands. Another step, he thought, exhaustion mixing with excitement. When he finally arrived back in his city, dragging suitcases into his penthouse, he felt a wave of disorientation. The polished marble floors, gleaming appliances, and minimalist decor seemed strangely cold compared to Sarah's warm, toy-strewn home. Normally, he'd sink into relief after a successful business trip. Now, he found the space lonely. He showered, changed into casual clothes, and downed a quick lunch. Then, at precisely 2:45 p.m., he hopped in a car and headed for Sarah's neighborhood. The drive felt like a shift between worlds, leaving the realm of high finance for a quiet street lined with trees where children's bikes lay on front lawns. Sarah's house appeared as unassuming as ever. A small yard, neat flower pots, a short walkway. He noted the welcome mat that Oliver had once scribbled on with sidewalk chalk. Taking a breath, he climbed the steps and knocked. The door swung open. Oliver stood there, face lighting up. "Dad, you're here!" He practically launched forward, hugging Nathan around the waist. Nathan froze, then gently rested a hand on the boy's back, heart throbbing with gratitude. He's not upset with me for leaving, he realized. Sarah, standing a few feet behind, gave a half smile. "Come on in," she said. "We were just finishing a snack." Nathan stepped inside. The living room looked familiar, where the dinosaur drawings, the bins of toys, the modest furniture created a sense of comfort. Oliver dragged him to the kitchen, where a plate of cookies sat on the table. "Mom made these," Oliver boasted. "They're chocolate chip." Nathan raised his eyebrows, glancing at Sarah. "I didn't realize you baked," she shrugged, brushing off the compliment. "Just needed something to distract Oliver from asking every hour. When is Dad coming?" Oliver beamed. "They're yummy. Can we show him the new thing I built?" He pulled at Nathan's hand. "I made a whole city with roads." Sarah nodded, so Nathan let Oliver lead him to the living room floor, where an elaborate arrangement of blocks and toy cars sprawled. As the boy explained each section, "This is the car lot, this is the bridge." Nathan's exhaustion from the trip dissolved. He knelt, listening with genuine awe. Each detail felt more real than all the corporate towers he'd ever negotiated. Sarah lingered in the doorway, arms folded, a soft look on her face. Occasionally she offered an aside. "He's proud of that tower," or "He wants to be an engineer someday." Her guarded demeanor was still there, but the edges had worn down. It was as if she'd settled into the idea that Nathan was truly here to stay. Eventually Oliver's energy waned, and he curled into Nathan's lap, drowsy from excitement. Nathan let him rest his head, running a hand lightly over the child's curls, marveling at the trust. Over Oliver's soft breathing, Nathan met Sarah's gaze. An unspoken conversation passed between them. "I'm here. Thank you for letting me in." She cleared her throat gently, beckoning Nathan to stand. "He'll nap soon," she whispered. "We can let him lie down in his room." Nathan carefully lifted Oliver and followed Sarah to a small bedroom, walls adorned with colorful stickers. The child murmured something unintelligible but didn't wake. Laying him on the bed, Nathan stood back while Sarah covered him with a thin blanket. Together, they tiptoed out. In the hallway, Sarah shut the door quietly. A hush settled in the house. They found themselves alone, an oddly intimate moment. Nathan noticed a framed photo on the wall, a younger Sarah, bright-eyed, holding a baby Oliver. Pain prickled in his chest, wishing he'd been there. "Focus on now," he reminded himself. They moved to the living room. Sarah gestured for him to sit on the couch. The tension was palpable, but it felt different. Less about hostility and more about uncertain possibility. She sank into an armchair opposite him. "So," she said softly, "you came back as soon as you could. That means something to me, and to Oliver." Nathan exhaled. "I promised I wouldn't disappear. If I can help it, I'll never let him feel abandoned again." She studied him, eyes flicking to the stack of legal papers he'd brought from Asia. He'd set them on the coffee table earlier. "You want to finalize that stuff soon, right?" He nodded. "Only if you're comfortable. I can't push you into a legal arrangement you don't want. I'd feel better if Oliver's status was secure." Sarah pursed her lips. "We can set up a time with my lawyer. I've looked over the initial drafts. We'll do a few revisions. Clarify that you're not claiming custody or making big decisions without me." Nathan's gaze softened. "Absolutely." He paused. "You both have your life here. I'm not trying to uproot that." She chewed her bottom lip, hesitating. Then, with careful resolve, she reached across, taking a pen from the coffee table. "I've come to realize that this isn't about me. It's about Oliver. If giving him legal recognition and future security is the right thing, then I won't fight you." Nathan's heart pounded as he watched her open the folder, scanning lines of text. "We can take it step by step," he murmured. "No rush. I just want you to know I'm all in." Sarah gave a slow nod, eyes still on the documents. "You're changing, you know," she commented in a quiet tone. The Nathan I knew 5 years ago wouldn't have done this. He offered a rueful smile. The Nathan from 5 years ago was blind to what mattered, and maybe he was a coward. I'm trying to be better now. She set the pen down, letting a silence pass. You've come a long way, she acknowledged. I can see that in how Oliver lights up around you. He trusts you. That's huge. Something swelled in Nathan's chest. Hope, or gratitude, or maybe a mix of both. He reached out, hesitating before lightly covering her hand with his. She tensed, but didn't pull away. They locked eyes, a dozen unspoken apologies and cautious affections swirling between them. After a moment he withdrew, not wanting to push. She leaned back, exhaling. We'll figure this out, she said simply. For Oliver's sake, and maybe for us, if that's possible. Nathan nodded, voice thick. I'd like that. A muffled sound came from Oliver's room, the child stirring. They both turned, the conversation halted by the reminder that their child was at the center of this evolving family. Nathan stood, offering Sarah a small smile. Let's go check on him. She nodded. As they walked together down the short hallway, side by side, it felt like a miniature glimpse of what a shared future might be. Not perfect, not easy, but bound by love for a small boy who saw them both as parents. And in that fleeting moment, Nathan felt surer than ever that, no matter how large his empire grew or how many deals he closed, it was these smaller steps, each quiet choice to be present, to protect, to love, that defined the greatest success of all. If you enjoyed this story, don't miss the next one. Just click on the screen